am Z. I'm a local writer and photographer. And I wrote a book called The Witch, which you can find on Amazon. Yeah, and that's pretty much, you can find me on Instagram. I think the handle is The Witch Books on Instagram. And that's my short little introduction.
I'm Josh. All my stuff is under Josh D. Sanders because I had to use my middle initial. I've been writing now for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 11 different books on Amazon, 2 different series. One is called Mind Over Magic. The other is The Hunter Symphony. Easier than trying to name all the different books in the series. Everything's listed on Amazon. Nice. And then I've also got the fan page on Facebook. I've got a website. It's mattoonunderground.com. Nice. And then the usual, I think I have an Instagram. Pretty sure I have a Twitter. Different things in different places. All that can be found through the website. It's easier that way.
Yeah. I'm one of those like people, like some people are like really smart about branding and they're like, I'm gonna have all my handles be exactly the same so I'm easy to find. And I'm like, whoops, I have 17 different handles on all different social media platforms. Good luck. Hope you can find me.
Yeah. I went and started some things at different points, and yeah, it's like,
yeah.
those don't all match.
It's fine. It's fine.
They can find me if they're looking.
Yeah.
I should probably do more social media anyway.
I mean, I feel like that's the way everything's moving, but it's also like overwhelming to navigate at the same time. Like social media is like, oh, that's where everybody's at. And you're like, but that's where everybody's at.
My thing's just always been I don't use them in general, so it's not natural.
Right.
I'm not really a picture taker. I don't do a lot of just little quick quip writing, right. So but fair enough.
Yeah.
So okay, you opened up. I'll ask the first question.
Okay.
Start. I guess we'll start there. Tell us a little bit about The Witch.
The Witch is a series that I started writing on, I think in 2013, 2014. I published it on Amazon for Halloween 2018, just to be on theme there. And The Witch is just basically a story about a witch who is a queer person. Kind of, there's a lot of different elements of like the main theme I feel like in the story is like who's good and who's bad if your protagonist is the bad guy and the bad guys are the good guys. Like who are you supposed to root for? Should you be rooting for this person or that person? And what's right? And are there any right decisions that anyone makes, or are we all just doing our best? Which is a little bit convoluted. I mean, really, I just wanted to write a fun story about a witch. That was, and it's a horror book. I've had some people that are like, ooh, tell me about your book. And I'm like, it's horror. And they're like, I can't read that. And I'm like, that's fair. Don't do it. They're like, I get scared. I'm like, don't read this. Like someone like was asking me about it one time and they were like, yeah, I don't do really well with like horror. And I was about to be like, oh, it's not that bad. And then I like thought about a couple of things in it and I was like, yeah, stay away from this. Don't worry about it. There are other books. Don't do it to yourself. But yeah. But I was like, kind of my motivation for starting it was like Twilight was really huge. And there was a really big sort of not pushback, but like the reaction among people, some people were like that it was promoting a really unhealthy relationship. And I kind of wanted to write like a queer alternative to a really unhealthy teenage relationship. So that was kind of like my motivation. And obviously it's not about teenager vampires yet. We'll see. But that was kind of like where my headspace was when I like really started like trying to flesh it out. But yeah, what about you? Tell me about the only couple of books you've written. You have far more you've written a lot more than I have. So talk about that.
Well, I started, at this point, I don't even remember exactly which year it was. I know the first book took me a solid, I think, 3 years or so to write, and then the process sped up significantly after that.
Yeah.
Getting to that the end was a big deal.
Yeah.
I started with a book called Poison Magic, and it stars Trevor Harrison, my main character. I sat and labored over creating him.
Yeah.
And wrote all this backstory and did all this stuff and have a long amount of stuff built for him in the future. The whole thing with Trevor is he is a psychic in a world of wizards and magic. As far as anyone knows, he's the only person who has any kind of mental abilities as opposed to magic.
Yeah.
And I love urban fantasy. I like the concept. I'm not big on high fantasy.
Yeah.
Elves and dwarves just don't really do it for me. But magic in our world, I like. But I also love science fiction. So I kind of clunkily blended those. And it's probably not as clunky as I think, but I could think of authors I like who'd have probably been better.
I mean, we can all think of that, but let's not try too hard.
In this, there's things I had read in stories before that I wanted to address. I've always been frustrated in books and movies that everything required a love story, even when one didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So in Trevor's case, there isn't one.
Yeah.
He is not the standard detective. He doesn't bed someone new in every book. None of that.
Shocker.
It gets tiresome.
Yeah.
And so
I feel like it's also kind of unrealistic, right? Like you're like, not everybody does this, and not everybody cares about this, and not everybody wants to do this, and not everybody wants to read a story about this. And I feel like it's important to like acknowledge that part too.
Exactly. Like, can there be something else as well?
Right.
So I go through with him, and it really was just a case. I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed telling stories. And this was when I finally decided to get serious.
Yeah.
Do it. And then as I was working out that series, I came up with another character that was going to be someone who occasionally showed up in Trevor's series. I don't know if you've ever read any books by Robert V. Parker or have seen the show Spencer for Hire. It's from the 80s. I love his sidekick character, Hawk. It's really not fair to call him a sidekick, just a cool character that shows up.
Yeah.
And my mind kind of went to something like that. But the longer I went to it, the more I was like, I want to write about this character.
Yeah.
So then instead of writing the second book of Trevor's, I quickly ran over and wrote the first book about Autumn because I wanted her book to come out before she appeared as a spin-off as one of his.
Yeah. Nice.
And so then I came up with Autumn Graves, who is a bounty hunter who has been both magically and technologically enhanced. So she's superhuman, but through a shadowy group and shadowy process.
Nice.
And I was going to kind of do some of the same stuff through this series, but I ended up having a sequence in which she met a woman, and I realized when I wrote it that they were going to have an encounter. And then I realized as time went, they were going to be together for at least the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And then I kind of realized they were going to be together longer than that. And I was like, okay, I guess I am going to put a romance in here, just in this series. So, I kind of it fell on me, and I wasn't going to stop it.
Right.
And so I went both routes with both characters. I wanted to deal with kind of experience and write and see from the point of view of different characters, though admittedly I'm not a woman in a relationship with a woman. So, I try not to speak for anyone, but on the
Yeah.
same token, I think it's good to have inclusion and diversity throughout my books.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of where I started with both of those.
Yeah. So when did you start writing? Like, what was like, that was like your first novel? Like, had you, like, what year, like, when was that, and what led up to that? Like, what made you want to do like so much writing?
I think I started Poison Magic somewhere around 2015 or 16, something like that. It was published in 2018. But I had written short stories, multiple attempts at novels, though I'd never finished one, even as far as junior high.
Yeah.
And younger than that. I'd always tried, but man, you go back and see the stuff you wrote as a kid, and it's rough. It's really rough. Even the things I was proud of were rough.
You're like 8, you're like, I am amazing. You look at it when you're 11 and you're like, oh, what did I know? And then like at 30, you're like, that's embarrassing.
11, 12, I don't look at my old work.
I'm beyond this.
Right. I've grown as an artist.
I've matured so much.
But I've just always liked storytelling. I've always thought that some of my biggest influences have always been characters in movies and books. I've always felt like I've learned a lot about life through fiction over nonfiction.
Yeah.
You kind of get past your shield, past your walls, and get you to think about something.
Yeah.
The way early science fiction could deal well with racism, but since it was about aliens,
right,
you immediately think that was about racism. And
you're like, this is easily accessible. That's interesting. Oh.
Right. And so I've always thought fiction was a great place to go for that.
Yeah.
Plus,
I feel like it helps a lot. Like like when you're writing fiction, you can create your own world for them to exist in, so that you don't have the same, like you don't have the same boundaries, and you can just create a whole world where something's possible. I know that in my book, I mean, it's something small, but I didn't want anyone to come out. Like, there's no coming out in my books, because I'm like, I'm creating a world where it doesn't matter if there's witches or any, like, it doesn't matter if there's a church and there's evil and there's good and there's all this stuff. I'm still going to create a world where if you're queer, no one cares. They're just like, okay, that's fine. Like, that's not going to be villainized. That's not going to be something that's shocking or unbelievable or anything that someone has to make an excuse for. So I was like, okay, I can create a world that seems realistic or seems real to like how we exist, that doesn't have that barrier in it, And I think that you can't do that if you're not writing fiction.
Yeah. You can sometimes create even a hint of what you would like our world to be.
Yeah.
Just one thing. This is what I would like to be the case.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of went with an our world with slight changes, and that I didn't do the hidden magic thing.
Yeah.
I went the route of everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
Out there are laws, there are things, and cars are enchanted. It's completely in capitalism.
Yeah.
Because what does our world do but find a way to sell everything?
Right. Right.
So they just incorporated magic into that, and boom, here we go.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought it was an interesting idea that what if everyone knew it and it was now boring?
Right. Yeah, because that's exactly what would happen if everyone discovered it. No one would be like, ooh. They'd be like, anyway, next topic.
Right. So of course, then that also brought up things like a hate group.
Yeah.
That's all about going back to no magic. Because introduce anything and you'll introduce somebody who wants to stop it.
Right.
I'm sure there are people against ice cream somewhere. So what motivated you to get starting? What pushed you to write as opposed to other things?
Well, I do other things too. So, but
Fair
really,
enough.
I don't know. I always, I think like watching stuff and feeling like, I mean, it's kind of narcissistic, I guess, but like when you watch something and you're like, well, I would have done this. And
Mhm.
like, there's an easy way for that to happen. Do it. Like,
True.
create your own story. But when I was younger, I think I really wanted, like when I was really young, I was very much interested in like movies and doing like writing screenplays and directing and doing all that kind of thing. And I was like really into acting as a young person. And then I realized once I was a teenager, I was like, oh, you have to be in front of people. And that is terrifying. So I kind of like went more towards like the writing aspect of everything. And then I never thought I would have enough patience to like write a book. And then I just did it. But I think like, yeah, I feel like I just always had like, I remember I was like trying to write when I was like literally like 7 or 8 years old. Like I was like, I'm going to be a writer. And I'm like, writing freehand with like clunky letters on like a piece of paper and like what this is not going to be a novel someday, you know. But like I don't tell 8-year-old me that. And I was like very convinced I was very talented at a young age. But yeah, I don't know, I always had like this inkling to like just tell stories and like create worlds and do kind of fantastical things and create things that people, you know, felt engaged in. And I think, you know, like I had like grandiose ideas when I was younger of what that meant. And then like as I grew up and as I came out and as I, you know, became more of myself, I realized that I just wanted to write things for people like me, for people that might not, you know, I want to write things for queer people. I want to write things for people that feel like big nerds. I want to write things for people that are like, you know, just want to feel seen and heard. Like that's what I want to write for and about. I want to write about those people, you know. So really it started when I was really young, but I didn't really find like, you know, I like went about it like several different ways throughout my life, but it really wasn't until I was like close to 30 that I started like really focusing on like making this something that I did. And I mean my 20s consisted of it too, but it was sort of like trying to find my place in it. But like 30 and beyond, I've been writing a lot more with a specific drive, I guess, that I didn't have before.
That focus that was missing when you were younger.
Yeah. The focus that 8-year-old me just didn't have.
Those 5 days spent working on that novel.
Right.
It was going to happen. Oh wait, boring now. Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah. So what made you decide to do like to self-publish? Was that like a conscious decision, or was it just something, was it something that you made a decision to do, or was it something that you like weighed and like thought about for a long time before you actually went for it?
I had figured I was going to go the traditional way because of course.
Right.
And then I had found a couple sites to try to do some things and just didn't have much success. I never did manage to rack up a bunch of rejections. I never ended up getting all the way to sending stuff in.
Yeah.
But then a friend of mine suggested a podcast and where they talked about self-publishing.
Oh, nice.
And he's like, you might be interested in this. And I started listening to them, and as they're going over it, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I would rather know that if I fail, it's because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Instead of nobody liked me.
Yeah.
Instead of I didn't talk to the right person. I want to know that I worked as hard as I could, tried as much as I could, and if I failed, it was because I sucked.
Yeah.
You know, because everybody's got that well, if they'd have just paid attention to me, and with traditional publishing, that may be true.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just didn't get your book in the hands of the right person at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how many good books have never been published?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, at least this way, I can control my own fate.
Yeah. I think like for me, like when I was in my 20s, I definitely tried to, like, I did go like the traditional route, and I queried and did all that stuff, and I got a few rejections, and I even got one that was like a really like it sounds ridiculous, but it was like very positive rejection. That was like, we tried really hard, we just couldn't find a place for this. And it was like a handwritten note, which is like unheard of, and it made me feel bad, but also good that it was something that, like someone actually tried and mulled over,
Right.
But then, like, it was around the time, it was like 2007, 2008, that time period when like Kindles were just starting to take off and digital was coming into play. And so, and a lot of the kind of publishing industry was losing a lot of money and funding, and they didn't have, like, it wasn't what it used to be. Like, it wasn't something that, you could just, they can't take a chance anymore on people because they have to have a guarantee, basically. So I kind of gave up, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to keep getting rejected, because it doesn't feel great. Even if it's a positive rejection, it's still a rejection and it sucks.
Right.
But I really, like, self-publishing is something that I thought about it for a long time. And like someone asked me, they were like, just why not just try the traditional route? Like, why bother self-publishing? Why not just, and I was like, why not just self-publish? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can control everything about my story. I can control everything about how it's viewed, how it's like the cover, the art, everything about it. Like, I can control all of that. I can control what stays in it, what gets taken out of it. I have complete 100% control. And that felt better for me, And also I was like, if I go the traditional route, and this was like a big deal for me, sort of, I was like, I want my stuff to be really easily accessible. And I feel like a traditional publisher is not going to have that in mind. They're not going to be like, let's make this cheap and easy to read. They're going to be
Right.
like, if let's say I got, an acceptance and they threw a ton of money at it, my book's going to be like $25. And that's not, some 15-year-old queer kid that just wants a book about someone that looks like them or is like them. Like, they can't buy that. You can't,
Yeah.
So I was like, I want it to be cheap. I want it to be easily accessible. I want it to be something that, people can look at and be like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. Like, that's an easy enough price. I can afford that. I can read about someone who's like me for an affordable price. So that's really why I went about doing it that way, because I just felt like I just wanted control literally over every aspect of it. I'm not a control freak, I swear.
It's mine.
My baby. But yeah, that I think there's a lot in, I feel like self-publishing gives people a chance to be, like you were saying, like, it gives people a chance to be seen that wouldn't necessarily be seen otherwise. And that's really sucky. Like, that's unfair that, like, oh, you didn't get seen because the right person didn't see your thing at the right time. Like, that's so, like, what? That's a ridiculous reason to go unseen for your whole life,
Yeah.
And that's part of why I do everything that I do, because I'm just like, I'm putting art everywhere, all over the place. I'm doing it because why not?
Right.
Like,
it's available now. You have the pipeline's open.
Yeah. You can, so you should.
And there's no longer a stack of gatekeepers ahead of you.
Yeah. Right.
Deciding that, well, I don't think this is what we want to do.
Right. And I think that's exciting. Like, it's exciting to me that, that's even a possibility, And then I think it's a benefit of social media and everything becoming so much more digital, is that it's opening up doors that weren't there 20 years ago.
Yeah. And there's a lot to wade through, but there's also some really great stuff that we wouldn't have had.
Yep.
I mean,
which is fun. And
good.
Sometimes it's fun to wade through the stuff, right?
This is true. Sometimes the search itself is worth it.
Right.
So what kind of influence did you have that formed what you do?
Oh man, that's a lot of things. I think Star Trek was a huge influence. I'm wearing my Star Trek shirt. One of them. I have my
love Trek.
Yeah, I think like I grew up watching Star Trek. I grew up watching sci-fi in general. I think it's very inclusive. Star Trek especially is really inclusive.
Yes.
And that was, it was a really, and I feel like throughout the years, like even now with like Discovery and Picard, like those shows, they're just growing. Like they didn't like stunt at any point. I've just been like rewatching Deep Space Nine, and I'm like, man, this show went there. Like it was the 90s, and the show was like, nope, we're doing it all. And it's really cool to like now that I'm like 35 and I'm like, oh, I have knowledge of things, to go back and watch it and be like, whoo, when I was 8, I did not get this. Wow. But it's a really, Star Trek was a huge influence on me. I recently wrote a piece about Eddie Izzard, the comedian.
Ooh, okay.
Eddie Izzard, very huge influence on me as like a teenager and young adult. And just other things, I mean, like musically, like Bjork was a big influence on me. AFI big influence on me. I like horror a lot. I like horror movies. I feel like I remember when I was a kid, like I saw like a horror movie like when I was way too young to see one, and as a way to like ease me out of having nightmares or whatever, my mom kind of like explained the magic of makeup to me.
Oh, okay.
And how like it's all fake and it's all done with makeup. And then I was like, oh my God, this stuff is really cool. And then I was just like, I love horror movies because it's all fake, So I think, just having like horror movies and queer stuff and inclusive stuff just really made a huge impact on me and definitely influenced the things I make now. So yeah, what about you?
Probably the first thing that really hit me, my uncle introduced me, I don't know if you've heard of him probably, but the author Isaac Asimov.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
He introduced me to the Foundation trilogy when I was young.
Oh wow.
That had a big impact and kind of cemented my love of science fiction. I loved Star Trek with my parents, grew up with Next Gen, watching with them. And then my dad and I fell in love with an excitement when Deep Space Nine was coming out, because I was talking about the show Spencer for Hire earlier.
Yeah.
Avery Brooks played Hawk on that show.
Yeah.
So my dad comes to me one day and says, there's a new Star Trek and Hawk's going to be the captain. I was like, well, I'm sold. But then, I've also spent a lot of time watching horror. Loved it when I was younger.
Yeah.
I loved Alien because of the mix of science fiction and horror. I've always liked some of the older stuff, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Straw Dogs, the original Wicker Man, not Nick Cage. But like Richard Matheson was a big one for me. I love his work, his ability to pace, the ability he had to control a reader with just the words, not even so much what he was saying, but how he said it.
Yeah.
I still look at his work and think the man was genius. I mean, he's still around.
Yeah.
And love his stuff. And, I read after I blew up and fell in love with writing, which was
Mhm.
after reading Jurassic Park, I started reading just everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
Before that, my parents could barely bribe me to read. It's weird. It was all movies and TV before that.
Yeah.
But then I just started eating everything up, and I'm sure anybody who reads any of my work can probably find a lot of what I was influenced by in the bits. It's like, oh well,
Right.
he's obviously read that. You know, you can only step so far away from your influences at points.
Right. Yeah. And you're always like, no one's gonna know what this is. No, everyone's gonna know what this is.
Like, you know, as much as you think you were clever, yeah, Lawrence, we can tell. Oh, I think we've hit our.
Yeah,
Actually.
that went by very fast.
Yes, it did. That went by really quick. So
I guess we did good.
I think so. I'm say anything you want to say to close?
It was great talking to you. Thanks for doing this. It's really fun and I really enjoyed doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, you too. I'm glad. I'm always glad to get to speak with somebody else who writes and someone else
Yeah.
around.
And like local too. Like that's always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard to find at times.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, enjoy the rest of your day, and
you too. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
and I guess to anybody watching, we'll see you later.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Hope you got what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. I assume they can probably cut there, and did say they were going to do some editing. So
Right.
well, all right. Not sure what else you have to do, but
yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. So, all right.
have a good day.
You too.
Feel free if you want to keep in touch. You've got my email
Oh, yeah.
now. So.
Yeah. Right on.
All
Same.
right.
Yes. Same.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, cool.
Bye.